and I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So I'm going to talk to you about scalability as kind of one of the key challenges and how we deliver scalability, actually on a concept of what we call the enterprise automation flywheel. So I'm going to introduce you to a concept which we think is actually going to kind of help drive far more scalability than in many other cases. Now, I'm starting with a custom example that has scaled. This customer has started from 2015 onwards, has more than 850 processes, and has 250 already of them deployed and fully productive. And the point why I'm showing this is because this is a customer who has already matured and is capable of basically deploying in a very relatively controlled short time frame a lot of automations. Now, why is this so interesting? Because if you want to get there, you actually have to do these things. And I'm taking this as quote because I think it's very relevant to what you'll be facing. So first of all, you've got to have a clear plan, because many of those things that we're facing here are not just purely technical challenges. They are challenges around building a center of excellence, kind of a group that then will look after the operations and maintain those automations, but also think about how will the people work actually in your environment with robots, and how will that change their role. Then the next important thing you need to kind of think about is identify the kind of key processes you really want to automate, because they are the critical part. And finding the right ones is one of the key challenges. And then least not last, also, how do you win the employees? How do you get kind of also the customers to be kind of seeing the benefit of your automation? And moreover, how do you make these automations sustainable? As you think about that, you're growing the amount of automations that you're putting forward, it's quite a key challenge. And then last, of course, your whole framework needs to be able to put appropriate controls in place to manage that. I think taking that, I want to play that back in a sense of applying this whole concept and how the automation vendor has to support the customers with the technology to enable also these key mechanisms that are kind of key to operate automations. And this is where I would like to introduce kind of the concept of the enterprise automation flywheel. So if you think of the core, the digital transformation, which basically you're driving, it starts with the employees submitting the ideas, or you even have a dedicated project top down that identifies the ideas and drives them. You have to build a COE. The COE basically then builds and tests them. The COE then will provide them, make them available, pushes them into the field where the employees then can use the automations, and that inspires to actually, and should inspire to new ideas to then kind of bring and flourish and bring more and more ideas into play. So that's actually your first kind of key flywheel to ensure engagement of your employees, bringing in new ideas. And we have customers like Barcelona and so forth, where in the shared service center, the key delivery lead is basically saying, well, the best RPA developers are actually the process owners or the subject matter experts. And that's exactly what you can embrace with this. You could even go further and actually come to a breakpoint moment where you then include the individual to the level that they could create their own automations and then submit that and bring that into this whole kind of governance of deploying automations. That concept of citizen developers, don't misunderstand me, we're not talking about complex automations as such. We're rather talking about all these many fingers and toes automations that are critical in terms in their whole sum of activity to drive innovation and drive the full complexity. All these we've seen has driven customer satisfaction. Employees are engaged and are part and happy to participate, and it does increase the productivity because this is one of the main drivers of automation. And then, of course, it delivers scale. So let's put that all into context as a vendor of how do we support and serve this kind of automation flywheel concept. So the first thing when the employee to submit ideas and to kind of capture the ideas, build up the pipeline and all these things where you start first, we have actually deployed a product which we call the Automation Hub. It basically helps to crowdsource the entire process from the idea to the actual deployment, put this into a web portal where the employee and the COE members or the business analysts can submit these ideas. And it's one central area where all these things can be captured and carried through. It looks like this. It's a portal. As an employee, I could say, I have an idea about HR screening. So I can now submit this idea and I get instantly a kind of feedback of how complex will this process be to automate. The other very exciting part of this will basically be that I get an immediate assessment of what's the return of investment. What's the benefit that I will get out of the particular automation? So also that is part of this portal. And moreover, I get a full transparency of the entire pipeline and what are these kind of automations that I'm kind of targeting. So full insight into what can be achieved here. The other very important component, and this is something that we've seen when deploying automations, is of course the documentation. Creating documentations for kind of the RPA developers then to take this forward and implement it is always kind of a time-consuming process. So we shortcut this whole thing by actually providing as part of the Automation Hub task capture. So you install this as a simple recorder. You start the process that you're wanting to do or you want to document by just starting the recorder, then stopping the recorder, and then you see your activity in a simple flow chart. In each boxes, there will be the screenshots, and you can now annotate, press the button, export the entire PDD document, and upload it right away into the Automation Hub. And of course, you're not just generating the document, you're actually also generating the automation code, which then can be taken by the COE to take further. So this has helped our customers like 60% of all the effort for documenting their processes immensely. So here's something that is kind of really key. Now, also in parallel, and this is where this term hyperautomation comes from, and including all these complementary products, is process mining. So if your core system is an SAP or Oracle or whatever in the core of your operation, you can actually tap into that and see how much standardized is your order to cash operation. And why is that relevant with process mining? Because it will tell you if your process is not very much standardized, you're actually spending a lot more time fixing that process before you're actually really doing some effective automation work. And in order to prevent this, process mining tools are key. We even go further and break and try to capture the task mining level as well, which is a product which we are going to release soon. Then we have the core of the automation, the studio to create the process flows, the orchestrator that manages the robots and contains all the automations that are to be executed and manages this. But one thing we add very early on top of that, and we were the first ones to kind of bring out a cloud to our community edition, where then worldwide people were running 30,000 or more robots connected to one orchestrator, is the Automation Cloud. So we now made a cloud product where you just sign up and you're immediately in your environment, and you can then start with your set of robots right away in your automation environment. So that's kind of a key thing. But now when it comes to actually the employees working day to day and applying automations, that's where our UiPath Assistant comes into play. That's where attended automation could be a really kind of important differentiator. And we made a breakthrough in attended automation. So if you think of attended automation, it is a robot that runs with you on your desktop. So and usually if it's attended automation, it means that you're triggering the robot that runs much faster, but whilst the robot is running, you cannot interfere because the robot is taking control, right? Now, we changed this whole concept. Our attended automation actually can run in parallel. So I can do my to-do list here on the left, and can start the automation, which runs in a separate window on my desktop, like a separate kind of virtual machine, and have the robot running in my same environment, doing resume scans or whatsoever without interfering into my work. And that really is a big, big kind of breakthrough around attended automation, which we are the only vendor offering this for you at the moment. The next kind of thing is to realize that actually we could do more, in a sense of I should not be just depending on an attended robot. I could be attending a robot that is unattended in the background, running somewhere and so forth. And all I need is a kind of a portal where I can, pick up any tasks that have been assigned to me through the kind of a task management capability of the orchestrator. So a robot can give me a task, I can approve it, I can send it back or reject it or whatever I want to do. But I can actually also provide a whole new user interface on top of my actual automations. So I can take a process that goes over multiple different systems that I have now automated, and I can create, for example, for the call center, a whole new agent console that provides to me the 360-degree data view that my core agents would need in order to deliver a much better customer service. And you can just really simply create this by using the UiPath Action Center. And of course, integrating chatbots, as this comes far more into play nowadays, is also something that we naturally integrate with, where we have oodles of libraries to support you with. And then extending, of course, to the cognitive capabilities. So this is the AI part. And if you think of the top of the things that are always the major critical parts in around AI requirement, it's the intelligent document processing and understanding, which will drive the amount and scope you can actually, and scale of automation that you can drive. And that's something that we have incorporated completely into our platform, meaning all the OCR technologies you can just plug and play, use our own one or the OmniPage, Microsoft, Google, Abby, whatever you want to choose here. And we've built around the whole mechanism of the human in the loop. Basically, if whenever the robot through the recognition is not 100% confident, it will involve the human to feed back and help to categorize this. And that information then is fed back into the machine learning engine, our AI fabric, that then will kind of make the modification and learn as we go. And that's kind of the latest part of our release, that it will completely be able to learn. So how does it look like? So on the left side, you see the actual directory with the original receipts or documents. And here you see then in the middle what we call the data validation station. So when the robot has ingested or taken in the various documents, it can then help you to kind of mark or change accordingly, to help extract the information correctly. In case the robot does not know how to categorize the particular document, it will then take you also into this loop where you then can kind of assign the category and then mark the particular position on the document that qualifies or quantifies this document as a particular type of document and classify it accordingly. And this kind of relearning will then be pushed back into the AI engine to do that automatically. But it's not just document understanding that our platform has really been ingesting. It's actually a whole AI engine. So we're not depending just on an engine that is from Google, Microsoft, or any kind of other AI platform. You can also have that whole solution running on-prem, and you can ingest any kind of machine learning model, whether it's a prediction, recommendation, and so forth, your data scientists are using to upload it and then embed it in a drag and drop kind of manner in your workflows. So that's extremely powerful. What can you do with it? Well, you can configure anything, such as having a camera observing the mail pigeonholes and then notifying automatically, the owner of a particular pigeonhole whether mail has arrived. You can do that with a customized machine learning model. But you can do many more. So custom-built machine learning models for fraud detection and many other kind of cases we have built, and we support kind of building from the immersion lab. Now, of course, entering and ingesting all these integrations to large platforms from AWS, but also Salesforce and ServiceNow and so forth. So we integrate into them in a native manner, meaning even a Salesforce developer can just use and drag and drop UiPath automation objects in Salesforce to just kind of integrate it in any kind of Salesforce automation. Now, one thing I wanted to address is that we are looking when you look from the business side, that's all great. But when you look at it from an infrastructure IT perspective, you're seeing this amount of kind of people expecting total savings and all these kind of automations you're driving. But one thing that it gets very often forgotten is actually these are programs. They are complex. You're deploying more and more. So there is a bit of a maintenance challenge. And this is the reason why we entered the test automation market, because we wanted to help the IT and operations guys say for RPA to manage all these, to ensure that the quality is always up notch, and that also the automation of ensuring the quality is guaranteed. We entered into the test automation market. And so RPA test automation is all part of our product portfolio, which we are offering. But you can even extend into normal application management testing for any application, whether it's a web application, mobile application. This platform, this test automation platform, is a fully fledged test automation platform to support. So with this, actually, we kind of come to the last point where we say, okay, citizen development, let's get people to program. And the question always is, how difficult is it? Well, we designed a product that makes it very, very easy to just click on the particular application or web page and then drag and drop and create very simple automations. And the simple automation we are addressing here is the typical thing you do in RPA by taking data out of system A, data out of system B, do something with the data and putting it in system C. All those kind of things, or working with email, Outlook, and or Office tools or whatsoever. All this is targeted exactly to be done with StudioX as a very easy tool to use. And last but not least, with all you have that put together, the one thing you always want to monitor and observe is, of course, the whole operation itself and the success of, how well are your automations doing. And we have something that, it does something very special in the sense of, if you, for example, want to monitor service levels and it kind of hits a certain threshold, you could configure a pulse, basically a trigger, to then trigger an appropriate RPA to execute an automation. So it could immediately start in a kind of incident process. So to close my presentation, I wanted to highlight one of the very interesting use cases and key use cases of EY themselves, using a tenant automation, deploying more than 140,000 robots to their workforce to help in their daily operations, and with a mix of course, unattended robots managing that. But the key achievements that we have been achieved in this way is quite significant. And feel free to reach out to our EY colleagues to learn more about it. It was presented in our forward in 2019. And with that, would like to close my presentation and thank you very much. And hope that it's time to kind of reinvent work.